All right. So today, inshallah, we will repeat the pillars of salah, inshallah, from the beginning, just so that we can cover, inshallah, all the pillars today. So what's the first pillar of salah? Come on. Yes, intention. So it's always going to be niyyah when it comes to rituals. So number one is an-niyyah. Like I said, it's the first pillar for all madhahib except the Hanafiya, who see it as a condition for prayer. So they see it as a condition of prayer, they don't see it as a part of prayer. That's how the Hanafiya understand it. The second pillar is, no, that's the third one. What's the second? Al-qiyamu ma'al-qudra. So standing up if possible. So to start the prayer, you should be standing up, right? If possible. Of course, if you are ill or you're not capable of standing, then you don't have to. But that doesn't count if you're capable of standing later. So if you can walk out of the masjid, you better be standing up for Takbirat al-Ihram. Right? If you can't say, well, I have my knee hurts, so you sit down for the beginning of the prayer. No, for the beginning of the prayer, you stand up, and then you can sit later during the prayer. That's fine. But the beginning, you have to stand, as long as you're capable of standing. Now, if you're not capable of standing at all, like someone who is paralyzed or or very ill, so he's not moving, then they don't have to. But if you're capable of standing up, even for a split second, then you need to stand up for the beginning of salah. During salah, it's not a problem anymore, but at the beginning, you have to. Right? The second, is that clear so far? Okay. The third pillar of salah is Abdul Rahman, Takbiratul Ihram, right? So the Takbir of Ihram. I'll write it and I'll transliterate it. Takbir al-Ihram. So Takbir al-Ihram, this is the initiating takbir. This is the beginning of salah. The movement of the hands is not the rukn. Like I told you, no movements of hands are seen as pillars, right? However, the actual takbirah, Allahu Akbar, is as long as you can speak. And if you cannot speak, then you do what is the substitute of that. So if someone is incapable of speaking, then they say it in their minds or whatever way that they can, right? So Takbir al-Ihram is a rukn. For the Hanafi, it's also a shart. They see it to be a condition of salah as well. All right. Now, number 4 is very simply Al-Fatiha. Reciting Surah Al-Fatiha. All right.
Say Takbiratul Ihram need to be standing.
Yes. So standing up is for Ihram. So these two happen together.
Where does
Iqama? Iqama is not a part of, that's not a part of salah. It's coming in a second. We're going to study in a minute, but it's not a part of salah. I mean, if you want to pray also, you don't have to make you don't have to make an iqama or an adhan. What you have to do for salah is meet the conditions. Do you remember what the conditions are? If you forget the conditions, go back and look at the conditions. Right, which is having wudu, which is not having any filth or najasa on you, standing in a place that doesn't have any filth on it, turning towards qibla, the timing has to be proper for salah. These are the conditions of prayer. The conditions have to be met first. Now when those conditions are met, you start praying. What is needed for this prayer to be valid? These are the arkan. These are the pillars of prayer that you need to do in order for your prayer to be valid. Iqama and adhan are not arkan, but they will come later on as a part of the ritual that are commonly done. Yes.
If you miss a rak'ah and Imam is going in the ruku and someone is running, and they must be standing first.
Yes. So like I said last time, you can't enter salah into the position that the imam is in. You have to stand and do takbir al-ihram, and then go to wherever the imam is. If the imam is in ruku', do ruku'. If he's standing up, then just stay standing up. If he's doing sujood, then go do sujood. Wherever he's doing, you can go to the place he is. But when you start prayer, you start standing up with takbir al-ihram, right? So if you run in, the imam is doing ruku' and you say Allahu Akbar and you're down, right? Then that doesn't count because you did not do takbir al-ihram standing up. You missed 2 rukun, right? You missed 2 rukun at least, and if not one of them. Okay, not 3 of them. Sorry.
You don't need anything before.
You don't need. Again, we're studying the pillars. Anything that's not a pillar, you don't have to do, right? So and be patient because we're going to come across pillars. We're going to come across obligatory actions. Then we're going to come across recommended actions. So once we've studied all these, you'll know exactly what is it that you can and cannot do. You can't leave, and how that all works. So these are the pillars. These are the things that if you leave intentionally, your prayer is invalid immediately. But this is what pillars mean. If you leave any of these intentionally, your prayer is invalid immediately. And if you forget them, you have to go back and do it again. You have to repeat the rak'ah all over again. The rak'ah needs to be repeated. You can't make up for it with a sujood sahu or something. No, you have to repeat the rak'ah in order for you to get what it is that you left. Does that make sense? Okay, and you have to go back to it. So if someone makes sujood, right, and he's supposed to come up for julus, but he stands up instead, right? You say subhanallah and he has to go back to that again. That makes sense? He has to go back. He can't continue. Now if he continues, then he has to make up a rak'ah at the end of prayer. He has to repeat a rak'ah at the end of the prayer. He can't do sujood sahu because he missed what we're going to come later on. We're going to find that these are two pillars. He missed two pillars. He missed the julus and then he missed the sujood. And those are two pillars that he missed. Right? So if you miss a pillar, you have to go back to it. You can't. If it's not a pillar, you don't have to go back. Actually, if it's not a pillar, you're not allowed to go back. You just continue. But a pillar, you have to go back. And if you don't, then you have to make up a rak'ah at the end. And if you leave it intentionally, you lose the prayer immediately. Does that make sense? That's why we're studying pillars. That's why they're very important. They're the most important part of salah. All right. Al-Fatiha, and we said that Shafi'iyya believe that Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is a part of it. So if you don't read Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, your salah is invalid. So you have to read it at least secretively. Right? You at least have to read it under your breath. But you cannot start Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen with no Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim for the Shafi'iyya. But that's only for the Shafi'iyya. The rest of them don't see it to be the same. Now I will cover here quickly the problem of reading Surah Al-Fatiha. So if you're standing behind an imam who's praying Salat al-Isha, all right, and he read Surah Al-Fatiha, so what do? Now there are a number of opinions here. The Hanafiya say, now if you want to note this because it'll help you because it's important. And Hanafiya say that you don't ever have to read Surah Al-Fatiha as a ma'moom. So if I'm praying behind an imam, whether I'm praying Isha behind him or Asr behind him, I never have to read Surah Al-Fatiha. His qira'ah is sufficient, whether he does it out loud or he does it secretively under his breath. Does that make sense? That's the Hanafiya's opinion. Shafi'iyya, they say a ma'moom, someone who's following an imam, has to read Fatiha whether it's a salah jahriya or sirriya, meaning whether it's Isha or Asr. You have to read the Fatiha. So for the Shafi'iyya, you have to read it after the imam is done. You have to read it. You cannot not read it. That makes sense? That's why if you go to a country that is predominantly Shafi'iyya, the imam will give enough time between the Fatiha and the next surah so that the people can read it. Because for the Shafi'iyya, you cannot not read it. You have to read it or you lose your prayer. That's for the Shafi'iyya. Now the Malikiyya, who have the opinion that is most beloved to people and easy, is that during the Jahri prayer, you don't have to. Meaning when the imam reads it out loud, you don't have to read it again. And if it's a sirri prayer, so if the prayer that's imam doesn't read it out loud, then you have to read it. And that's the Malikiyya's opinion. The Hanabila say that you have to read it when the imam doesn't read it out loud. But when he does read it out loud, you should try and read as much as you can during the pauses that he leaves at the end. So for the Hanabila, if he leaves a pause, you should try and get in an ayah. The Hanabila say that if he pauses between an ayah and an ayah, you can bring the ayah. So if the imam says, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, and then he pauses, then you should say Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, because he gave you a pause, right? So the Hanabila say that you should read it within the pauses that the imam offers, right? So again,
the exact ayah that he mentioned,
or whatever you can, of course, like use the pauses between the ayat, use the pauses at the end of the ayah. Right? So the Malikiyya and the Hanabila have the same opinion generally, which is you have to read it as a ma'moom. If you're praying behind an imam, when he doesn't read Fatiha out loud, and you don't have to when he reads it out loud. The Hanabila say that if you can find the pauses to read it in between the pauses, that's good. Shafi'iyya say you have to read it, whether he read it or he doesn't. So whether it's a secretive prayer, a low tone prayer like Asr and Dhuhr, or he's reading out loud, you have to read it, or else you lose your prayer. So the Shafi'iyya, for them, it's a rukn, regardless, which makes it a bit difficult. The Hanafiyya say you don't have to read it at all. If you're being a ma'moom. If you're standing behind an imam, you never have to read, even during Asr time. You don't have to. You can just start with the surah. That's how the Hanafiya view it. They say it's mustahab, meaning it's recommended, but you don't have to. If you don't do it, your prayer is still valid. Yeah. Does that make sense? Do you understand the different opinions? Those are the opinions. What should we follow? I think the Malikiyya have it probably the best. They have the best model. They put all the dalil together in a way that brings it everything. Everything is used. I mean, all the hadith that exist are used in the Malikiyya's version, which is you read when the imam is not reading, and you don't read when the imam is reading out loud. Yes.
And so, like you were saying, that for the Hanbalis, like it's exactly the same as the Malikis, except that if you have an opportunity,
there you go. Yep.
Then you can repeat in the pauses.
Perfect. All right. والركوع وَالطُّمَأْنِينَةُ فِيهِ. So ruku' is a rukn, obviously. Now, from now on, every time we say something, you're going to say the exact same word after it, which is at-tuma'nina fihi. I'll write this like 3-4 times, which is calmness and stillness within the movement. So you have to come to a point where every bone stops moving for a number of seconds. So you can't be on the move. Right? This is not considered ruku'. That is an exercise you do in the morning. Ruku', you have to go down. Now you have to be still for a number of seconds, then you can come up again. Right? Like we talked about last time, it should be long enough for you to say at least one tasbihah. Like one subhana rabbi al-azim wa bihamdi or subhana rabbi. It should be enough for a tasbihah. So tuma'nina for the Shafi'iyya is a rukn, meaning if it's a pillar. If you don't do it, then you have to repeat your prayer, you have to go back and do it again. That's how important calmness and stillness within a movement is. All right. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Number 7, الرفع والاعتدال. Rising. Let's say rising. Rising from ruku'. So rising from ruku' is also, it's also a rukn. The Hanafiya, by the way, don't see it to be a rukn, which is interesting, but we'll talk about that in detail once we study a text in Hanafi fiqh. But for them, it's not a rukn. For everyone else, of course, sees it to be. So a rafa' is a rukn, standing up is a rukn, and then immediately is the same word, same wording before. At-tuma'ninatu fihi. Calmness within that movement itself is also a rukn for the Shafi'iyya. How many arkan are there for the Shafi'iyya? At the beginning of the text.
18.
Yeah, so he said 18. We're going to count 18 rukn. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. After that was sujudu, and then making sujud or prostration, obviously. وَالطُّمَأْنِينَةُ فِيهِ.
Rising up from ruku', if you raise your
So that's not a rukn, is it? Is it? As long as it's not here, it's not a pillar. So right now we have to be patient, because if we're gonna cover all of that.
I'm just asking, would that part be included as?
No, it's not. No gestures with your hands are seen as a pillar. These are the pillars.
This question is, will it count as calmness? Like that's what, right?
Yes.
Will it count as calmness, like you're standing up?
No, the calmness has nothing to do with the gestures of the hand. It has to do with the posture of the body. So when you come up again, you have to stand up fully, stand up straight, and then stay there for a number of seconds. It has nothing to do with whether you can easily make the gesture and still not give enough time. Like you can still make the gesture and go down like immediately. So it's a matter of timing. Tuma'nina is a matter of timing. It's not a matter of the heart. Because you could say, well, someone could stay in a movement for 15 minutes and his heart not be mutma'in at all. He's thinking about a million things. So this is tuma'nina, this is a physical tuma'nina. This is not a spiritual one. Spiritual, of course, the whole point of salah is spiritual calmness, is serenity, is peace of mind and heart. But this is right now we're studying the mechanics. We're not studying the spiritual aspect of salah. All right. So now after that, al-julus, so sitting between the two sajda. So the sitting is also a rukn, right? Also at-tuma'ninatu fihi. Some Shafi'i in later books, they said, okay, let's forget about this. Just say at-tuma'ninatu fil arkan. Just calmness in all arkan instead of repeating it. But that's how the Imam Abu Shuja did it. He just counted them one by one. I think there's a point which is for you to remember that each one has its right of timing. Do not be rushing any of the pillars. All right. والجلوس الأخير والتشهد فيه. So the final sitting or the final julus. The first julus is not a rukn. We will come to it in a minute, but the first julus is not a rukn. This last one is. So if you're and this is regarding the prayers that have more than 2 rak'ah in them. So Maghrib, Asr, Dhuhr, and Isha. Now these prayers, the final sitting before, meaning when you're going to do your salam, that sitting is a rukn. The first one that comes in the second rak'ah for all of them, for Maghrib and for Asr and Dhuhr and Isha, that is not a rukn. That's a wajib, it's an obligatory action. We'll come to that in a minute. But it's not a rukn. The last one is. Does that make sense? The last one is a rukn. The first one is not. And that of course causes an important topic you need to understand during salah. So the last one is a rukn. At-tashahhudu fihi, saying tashahhud in that final sitting, is rukn. Tashahhud in the first one, if the first one is not rukn, anything said in it is not going to be rukn either, because if anything said in it is going to be a pillar, then it has to be a pillar by default, or else how do you get it done? So the final sitting is a pillar, saying tashahhud in it is a pillar. وَالصَّلَاةُ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ فِيهِ. And then doing salah ala nabi alayhi wasallam, doing the salawat al-Ibrahimiyya is also a pillar. Alright, so 10, 11, 12, 13, 14,
So
15.
that being said, how did the Rasul do his tashahhud? Like, what would he say? Would he say?
Alright, so the Shafi'iyya, what did the Shafi'i say? At-tahiyyatu al-mubarakatu as-salawatu at-tayyibatu lillah. That's how they begin it. And then the rest of it is the same. Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabiy wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The same stuff. But the Imam al-Shafi'i took the hadith, I think it was narrated by Ibn Mas'ud, wallahu alam. The hadith that, the hadith that what we use is the Ibn Mas'ud narration. Imam al-Shafi'i uses the Ibn Abbas narration. That says, at-tahiyyatu al-mubarakatu as-salawatu at-tayyibatu lillah. We say, at-tahiyyatu lillahi والصلوات والطيبات, right? So that's how. So that's the only difference at the beginning. You can feel free to say either of them, because both of them are narrated through a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. It's up to you. Just the actual saying is what you need to make sure that you do. And then the salawat al-Ibrahimiyya is Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim until the end of it. And you shouldn't say during prayer anything extra. So I'm not sure if it's worth noting here, but so whenever you do salah ala nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you say Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammad. So you use the word nabiyyina or sayyidina or habibina or whatever, like any a word that shows status and respect for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's fine, just not during salah. During salah, stick to the text that the Prophet ﷺ that we had narrated to us. So say exactly how he said it, just because it's salah. Outside of salah, do what you want. You want to spend 15 minutes building up to his name, that's fine by me.
Would the Rasul say,
so we don't know, we never heard him. No, he said during prayer, this is what he taught. So this is based on the teachings the Prophet ﷺ did. He actually sat down and taught the Sahaba. Say tahiyyatu lillahi wa salawat assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabi. Say that. Now what he said, of course, he's not going to. It wouldn't work. But right? But the salawat al-Ibrahimiyya, he could say Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim. Salatu ala. This is asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant blessings, to grant acceptance and guidance. So you could say that to anything, right? Alayhi salatu wassalam is something that we say specifically to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but the meaning is general, like huwa alladhi yusalli alaykum wa malaikatuhu. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does salah upon you as well. You don't ask it for yourself, but he does it to you, subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is basically saying that he grants you blessings and guidance and acceptance and connection. Salah means connection. Always salah means connection. Anything that is taken from it, any derivative, is always going to mean connection. It's not going to mean anything. That root meaning is always going to be there, meaning he's connecting to you, subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the point. Yes?
I heard the minimum for the Ibrahimiyya in the Shafi'i madhab might just be one of the opinions.
Yeah.
So if you just said Allahumma salli ala Muhammad and you stopped there, and you broke your prayer early for whatever reason, your prayer would still count.
Yeah, that's true. And there's a lot of different opinions on how much you need to say. I'm not going to get into all the different madhab and what they say is the minimum for salawat al-Ibrahimiyya and the maximum. Just say the salawat al-Ibrahimiyya, and inshallah leave that for future texts that are a bit more, inshallah we go into a bit more detail. But generally speaking, doing the salawat al-Ibrahimiyya with this minimum need for the Shafi'i is just a regular Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, but you should recite it till the end. After that, at-taslim al-ula, the first taslim. again, the details in all of this is countless. Like, meaning you could spend just studying the pillars, like 4 months just studying the pillars, going into all the details that the ulama and the fuqaha, the madhab talked about. But that will mean that you guys will get very, very bored, and if 5 years from now we'll still be studying Abu Shuja'. So no, it's not worth it. We read, we understand this text, we take the basics from it, and then we move on to another text, and then slowly you build opinions, and you build understanding, you build depth. But I feel like you shouldn't go, if you go into a lot of depth immediately, you burn out. You get really tired, and it's too much information, and you feel like you don't know anything at the end because you heard 15 different opinions all at once. So just take it step by step, inshallah. The first taslim, meaning when you first go, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Once, for the Shafi'iyya, this is a rukn, right? In order for you to leave prayer. The second one is not. So the first one is what you need to actually leave prayer. So once you say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, you're out of the prayer. It's done, it's over. The second one is a sunnah, but it's not a rukn. So taslim al-ula is the rukn. Does that make sense? That's why sometimes people, you'll see them make one taslim in salat al-janazah and different other types of prayers. But for the Shafi'i, the first one is rukn. Based on that, when you're praying a ma'moom behind an imam and you're late, meaning you have 2 rak'ah to make up for, or yani rak'ah to make up for, the moment he says Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, prayer is done, you can stand up and continue. You don't have to wait for him to do the second one, because once he's done the first one, prayer is over, so you can just stand up. Does that make sense? So after the first taslim, you can stand up and continue to get the rak'ah that you lost. All right. Yes?
For the shahada and tashahhud and the tala' al-nabi, give us one phrase that we can say from beginning to end for the salah.
Tahiyyatu lillahi was salawatu wa tayyibat. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. And that is what the Jumhur sticks to as far as the wordings. Yes?
Are there different opinions on the finger?
Yes, again, if it's not here, it's not a pillar. Right? So if it's not here, it's not a pillar, meaning if you don't do it, it doesn't matter. Or you don't do it, it's not a problem. Of course, obligatory actions will be talked about. They do matter, of course, but they're one level yet less. But no, the movement of fingers is sunnah at best, and there's a lot of difference of opinions. I'm hesitant to go into them, but I will try and do a simple summary, and then I will not allow anyone to ask any questions after it. You just understand it, and that's it, because there's too many issues regarding it, and I just want you to know a few things, and that's it, because it's just a long debate between scholars on how and when, and if it's, it's too much to go through for a simple text. Number 17, before the end, وَنِيَّةُ الْخُرُوجِ مِنَ الصَّلَاةِ, the intention of leaving prayer. Intention to leave prayer. That makes sense? So just like you need an intention to enter prayer, to begin prayer, you need the intention to leave prayer. What is that? That it comes in the form of what? It just comes in the form of you understanding that prayer is over. That's all it is. Niyyah, intention, is just you knowing what you're doing. If you don't know that you're praying, then you're not praying. And if you don't know that you finished prayer, then you haven't finished prayer yet. So there has to be an intention for everything you do. That's the only thing that intention actually means. It just means that you understand what it is that you are getting into, what it is that you are doing. Okay, so that's number 17. The final الترتيب على ما ذكرناه. So tartib means in sequence. That you do it in sequence. You don't mess up the sequence, of course. In wudu, we talked about in wudu how the Shafi'iyya always also see sequence as a pillar. However, not everyone does. So if you do mess up the sequence for other madhahib, your wudu is fine. For the Shafi'iyya, it's not okay. If you were to mess up the sequence of wudu, and obviously for all the madhahib, without any exception at all, messing up the sequence of prayer is not acceptable. If you mess up the sequence, then your prayer is invalid. Right? So if you decide I want to do the 2 sujood, then I'll do sujood, then I'll come back for rafa', and then I'll do ruku', and then I'll do sujood later. No, you have to do exactly in the same sequence that the Prophet ﷺ did it. And if you mess up the sequence, then that is a rukn, that's a pillar. You have to repeat the rak'ah if you did it by mistake, and your prayer is invalid if you did it on purpose. Yes?
We discussed that one time because I was worried about this, that if it's based on doubt,
yeah.
If you don't think you're not sure if you did the second sajda,
yeah.
you go for it out of doubt, and then do sajda sahw after you make taslim.
Yep.
And you said that that's okay.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So whatever it is you Are we good here? I can take this off, inshallah. These are the 17 pillars. Intention, standing for Takbiratul Ihram as long as you can stand. Even if you can stand for a second, you need to stand. And then Takbiratul Ihram, the beginning takbir, the initiating takbir. Reading Surah Al-Fatiha. We talked about the Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim being an ayah for the Shafiee, so they have to read it. So it's good for you to read. If you don't read it out loud, at least read it under your breath. Ruku', and then calmness in it. Rising from ruku' or rafi', and then calmness in it. Sujood, calmness in it. Julus, sitting between the two sajdas, calmness in it. The final sitting of prayer, tashahhud in that final sitting, and the salawat al-Ibrahimiyya in the final sitting. All three of them are pillars. After that, the first taslim is a pillar, the first one, the second one is not. The intention to leave prayer, and then doing everything that we talked about in sequence. So don't mess up the sequence. All right. If you are hesitant, if you're standing in salah, and you say to yourself, what did I do? Did I do 2 rak'ah or 3? Then what do you go with? No, you're not certain of either. You're like, did I do 2 or 3? What do?
You do one extra, and then that
you always go with the lower number. You always go with the lower number. If you're not sure 2 or 3, then you did 2. Right? Then you continue based on that, and you do 2 sujood sahw at the end. If you're not sure 3 or 4, you consider yourself you did 3. You do the 4th if it's Isha, and then, or Asr or Dhuhr, and then you do sujood sahw at the end. So you always, when you're doubting how many did I do, you go with the less. If you're doubting, did I do 2 sujood or 1, you go with the less, and then you go back to the sujood. If you're too far away, then you continue and you bring a rak'ah at the end and you do sujood sahw at the end.
Most of the time, I doubt about I have done more.
More? MashaAllah. Allahumma zid wa barik. You're doing more. So always go with the lower number and just do sujood sahw. In that case, just do sujood sahw. So the first tashahhud. This is called a wajib, or obligatory action. It's not a rukn. It's not a rukn. Why I'm going to explain this now, because I just don't want you guys to get confused later. But why is this important? Because if you miss it, if you are making sujood in the second rak'ah of any of the 4 prayers, or even the 3 prayers like Maghrib, you're making sujood, all right? And then you come up from sujood, you're supposed to sit. But instead of sitting, you stand up. And then you remember that you were supposed to sit. Now if you go back, you lose your prayer. If you go back, why? Because you went from a rukn, which is standing, right, to something that is less than a rukn. So if you go from a rukn to something less than a rukn, rewinding, you lose your prayer. If you're rewinding, going back, if you're going to leave a rukn, you have to leave it to another rukn, to a rukn that is like it. Does that make sense? So meaning, the example would be, if I made sujood, the first sujood, like before, not the second one, and then I stood up. Now I missed 2 rukn. This is a rukn, this is a pillar right now, but I missed 2 pillars, so what do? I go back, I rewind back to the pillar, I have to go back to it. But if I did the 2 sujood, and I missed the first tashahhud, and I stood up, this is a pillar, tashahhud first is not. I cannot go back. I cannot go back to it. Now, of course, there's a lot of difference of opinions on how that works. But if I remember for the better part, if I remember before I actually stand up fully, I can go back. But once I've stood up and I'm starting my qira'ah, and I remember, you can't go back anymore. So what do? Do you lose your prayer? No. When you forget a wajib, you continue and you do 2 sujood sahw at the end. When you forget a wajib, you continue and you do 2 sujood sahw at the end of prayer. Does that make sense? So what happens if I leave it on purpose? I lose my prayer immediately, because it's a wajib. It's something between a pillar and a sunnah. If I leave a pillar on purpose, what happens? If I leave a pillar on purpose, immediately invalidate my prayer, right? If I leave a sunnah on purpose, what happens? Nothing happens. Your prayer is fine. But if I leave a wajib on purpose, I invalidate my prayer. Right? So those are 3 things. Now, if I leave a rukn by mistake, what happens? I have to go back and get it again. If I forget a pillar by mistake, I go back and I do it again. If I forget a sunnah by mistake, what happens? Nothing. Sunnah, nothing. If I forget this by mistake, I do sujood sahwi instead. Now if I forget a pillar by mistake, I have to go back and get it and do sujood sahwi. So there's two things I have to do. At the end I'll make a little table for you, inshallah.
If we miss the rukn, we have to go back and repeat it.
Yes.
Or the car, only that thing.
It depends on how far you away from it. If you're too far away, then you just continue and you get you repeat a rak'ah at the end. And if it's just like example, you stood up and you remembered, you sit down again, because you're going back just one step. You shouldn't go back more than one step. Yeah.
And so like if you're like 75% standing, you still haven't got to the next rukn, so that still means you can go.
Yeah, مع خلاف بين أهل العلم, with a lot of difference of opinions regarding that. All right, but for the better part, yes, as long as you didn't stand up fully, then you can go back. But if you stood up fully, you're now within the rukn, within a pillar. You cannot go back to something that is less, which is the first tashahhud, which is a wajib. It is not a rukn.
I mean if we miss a pillar, then in the end we have to
repeat a rak'ah. Yeah, the whole rak'ah. So if it's just one movement away, then you can go back to it immediately. But if it's too far down the road, meaning you're in the fourth rak'ah, and you remember that in the first rak'ah you didn't bring the second sujood, right? Then you just repeat a rak'ah at the end. And then you do sujood sahwa at the end of it. Does that make sense? Are you guys understanding the logic of this? It's important that you understand it, because once you do, you'll grasp it and you'll know how to maneuver through salah.
Imam, for example, doing Salat al-Duha,
yes,
and he's on the second rak'ah, but he doesn't go for the first tashahhud.
Yeah.
He stands up. Do you?
So so you say subhanallah in case he's not fully standing up. If he's fully standing up, he cannot go back, and if he goes back, he invalidates his prayer and yours. So you just stand with him, and then he makes sujood sahw, because he carries it. The mistake he made, he carries it for all of you. So it's not upon you. Some scholars say that you can actually do mufaraqah, you can leave prayer and do it and then continue on your own. But I don't think that's proper for something that is less than a rukn. Only for a pillar would you do that. Meaning if an imam lost a pillar and you gave him subhanallah, I didn't listen to you, then you can stick to it if you want. Some scholars say, we'll talk about that more in detail at the end of salah, inshallah. But there's different ways of dealing with it, especially when the imam makes a mistake. But if he makes a mistake in that specifically, so he's doing first, he's supposed to sit for the first tashahhud, but he stands up, you say subhanallah, but he was already standing up, then khalas, you just stand up with him, right? It's a problem, because if he doesn't know, if the person is praying as an imam, and he comes up fully and he's starting to read the Surah Al-Fatiha, and they say subhanallah, and I forgot, and he goes down, khalas, ahlan wa sahlan, the whole prayer is gone now, because you went from something, because you're rewinding in the wrong manner. It doesn't work. Like you can't go from rukn to wajib, or that, and that is the prominent opinion amongst the madhab. So it's important that we know that particular, that's a very specific situation. It's an important one for everyone to know, that's how it works, in case you're praying imam one day, or in case you're praying on your own. If you forget it and you're standing up, khalas, continue. If you're not standing up yet, you're still halfway, you can sit. Yes.
Assuming even he did forget to do such a sahwi, you could just tell him at the end you forgot to do this, and then
yes,
you could all do it.
Sahu an sahu. So if you forget sahu, it's no big deal. Let's say that, but of course you should revise your whole prayer plan. Like if you forgot a thing and then you forgot the sahu at the end, that means where were you in the prayer? Like you had no idea what was going on. You're forgetting arkan and forgetting wajibat and forgetting sahu at the end. Maybe go tawadda again, focus and come pray again. But just to speak from a technical point of view, if you forget sahu, it's fine. You don't have to do anything. Now, some scholars say, of course, again, it's a difference of opinion. You can do takbir and then do sujood sahu and do taslim, but most of them say you don't have to do anything. So that's something that's worth noting, inshallah. Yes?
For the rukn, if you miss a allowed rak'ah, so you do one rak'ah and then you do the tashahhud, and then you remember at the end that you didn't do the first one. Do you do the last rak'ah out loud or not out loud?
Say it again? I completely didn't understand. Yeah.
4 rak'ah.
Yeah.
Let's say dhuhr.
Yeah.
You have to do 2 rak'ah, Isha.
Yeah.
2 rak'ah out loud.
Yeah.
You miss one that's out loud. And then at the end you do that one that you missed that was out loud.
What do you mean you missed one that's out loud?
So what do you read out loud in the beginning?
Yeah, is reading out loud a rukn?
No, but you have to do the rak'ah at the end.
Is reading out loud a pillar?
No.
Are you saying that you missed that whole rak'ah, or you missed reading out loud?
You missed the rak'ah.
Oh, so you just read out loud once,
And then
and then you start first tashahhud.
Yeah.
Yeah, then you'd have to repeat it. Which one you're going to do.
Yeah.
So the Hanafiya say you would do it out loud, and the rest say no. Right? So
you do it right after the tashahhud, or you do it at the end of the prayer. So if you remember,
it depends on when you remember. So it depends on when you remember during the prayer. So if you remember during the third, then that's the third, and you continue and do the fourth. If you remember as you're doing the final tashahhud, then you stand up and you do the rak'ah again. Now whether you read out loud or not, the Hanafiya say you read out loud because you have to bring that rak'ah that you lost. And the Shafiee and the Hanafi and the Maliki and the Hanabila say no, that's your fourth rak'ah.
If you remembered before taslim, you would definitely do it before because it's compulsory within the prayer, right? If you remembered afterwards, then you would definitely do it after.
Yeah, but he's saying when he remembers, does he read out loud or not? So Hanafiya say yes, the rest of them say no. Yeah.
Maybe I missed this, but if you read this name, let's say that your brother or somebody comes to the prayer late, and they make this name with you, but they need to make up the rak'ah.
So it depends on why he made taslim with you. So if he forgot, then he stands up and he gets whatever rak'at he's missing. And if he didn't forget, he just did it because that's what he thought was right, then his whole prayer is invalid, because it's all based on intention. When you stood behind this person to pray, what was your intention? How many rak'ahs did you want to pray? That's what intention means. I'm standing here to pray 4 rak'ah. Well, you only prayed 3. Why you pray 3? I forgot. Okay, fine, then get the 4th and do sujood sahwa at the end. But I didn't think of anything, and I just did whatever he did. Okay, then repeat the whole prayer because your niyyah was wrong to begin with. You didn't know what you were doing. So it's always about what you're doing. So if you're praying 2 rak'ah, and inshallah the guy in front of you prays 50,000 rak'ah, you're going to finish after 2. If you're here to pray 3 rak'ah, doesn't matter how much the guy in front of you is going to pray. If he prays 1 rak'ah, you're fine. You continue because you're here to pray 3. You're going to pray 3 because that's your intention at the beginning. Whether the guy in front of you prays 1 rak'ah, 2 rak'ah, 3 or 4 or 5, doesn't make a difference. You're going to do 3 because that's what you're going to do. Now, if you don't know what you're going to do, you're just following the imam. There's difference of opinions amongst the fuqaha when it comes to that. Is his prayer acceptable if the imam makes a mistake? I tend to side with the opinion that no, his prayer is not acceptable. I think the least we can ask from ourselves is to know what you're doing. And just know what you're doing. Know how many rak'ah you're going to pray. It's worthy, because if you don't get into the habit of doing that, then that's why these mistakes happen. Because you're not taking enough time to think. Okay, Isha is 4 rak'ah. I know it doesn't. You're like, no, that doesn't happen. Yeah, it doesn't happen in jama'ah because you're with the jama'ah. But when you're at home and you're in a hurry, you could do takbir. You have no idea. It's just Dhuhr, Asr. What is this? I'll make up the intention as I go along. No, you have to, before you start the prayer, think. Okay, what is this right now? Is it Sunnat al-Fajr or is it Fajr? I had students who would say, we start and then we make up our minds. We want to make this sunnah. No, we have to, before you start, is this sunnah or is it fajr? And then go with the intention that you make, because that is what counts. Okay, we'll stop there. We'll just read next time sunnah. We'll start with the recommendations or recommended actions of salah next week. Next week it'll be 8 o'clock. Isha will be 8 o'clock. So we'll pray Isha and start immediately. We'll go till 9:10. So we'll get around 55 minutes, inshallah, of work. Yes.
You want to do another thing on the first tashahhud?
What was it?
Wajib. Are there any other wajib?
Yeah, there are other wajibs. I'll try to get a couple of them as you go. See, Shafiee have a very specific breakdown. They have something called pillars in their recommendation, and then they have something called hayat. They have something called a hay'ah. A hay'ah is something that is similar to wajib. So I will explain it to you, inshallah, once we get to it. But this text doesn't explain wajibat clearly. So I needed to explain to you the first tashahhud as a wajib, and then I'll elaborate a bit more on that, inshallah, next time. Jazakumullah khair. Subhanakallah bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik.